Hello, everyone, and welcome to State of the Realm, your weekly Final Fantasy XIV podcast. This week, I swear it's the last show about Ultimate. I promise. For now, until the next Ultimate, this is the last show about Ultimate. This week, I promise. It's 3 weeks in a row, and people are probably sick of it, but it's been such a huge topic, and it has been cleared. We don't have someone from the World First group here, as there's a language barrier. However, we do have an expert on to talk about his experience with the fight progression as a whole, and at least where he's currently sitting in his progression. But we'll get into that in a second. I'm one of your hosts, Michael, Mr. Happy Pulver. Of course, joining me is Slyh, aka Slythefox, aka Slyh, aka Greyfox, aka you, my boy Blue. How you doing?
I could have gone with one more week of Ultimate.
No, because next week should be Rival Wings, and we could do a PvP show. And we can invite Burn.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna be fun.
And of course, you know, with World First having happened, we need to bring an expert in at this point. Slyh and I can't keep talking about Ultimate from a point of perspective that we don't have. So we brought in an expert on World Prog, someone who's been a guest on the show before. You all know him as Layla or Klopsgg, whichever works. How you doing, Layla?
Doing pretty good. I haven't cleared the fight, so I mean, expert, your words, not mine.
I'm saying, okay, relative to how many people are where you are, I'm gonna say expert.
Okay, all right, I'll go along.
I feel like that's fair.
I'm doing well, man,
fair.
and I'm happy that you invited me on, and I hope we'll have a good show today.
So just to be clear, anyone watching this live on Twitch, this is actually a pre-recording. Because it was kind of scheduling for this kind of happened kind of last minute, like trying to figure out exactly when we wanted to do it time-wise and day-wise. Decided to record it on a Monday, and it's going to be aired on Twitch on Tuesday. So we don't see any of you talking. If you're saying things and asking us questions, we're not there right now. Slyh was so excited. I was like, Slyh, you don't have to show up on Tuesday once we do this. We're good.
I needed a break.
He needed a break. This man needed a break. He's missed only one episode because there was a show that him and I weren't on, and he needs a break. That's two. Remember, you've been on 2 more episodes of State of the Realm than I have, Slyh. Don't forget that. I've missed 3 episodes total.
Yeah, seniority.
Yeah, I mean by all definition.
Really.
I know.
Really,
I mean,
no.
yeah, but I mean by definition, yeah, you kind of do. All right,
But it's yeah.
but yeah, I know we'll be on this topic forever if we start it. So, Ultimate, it's been cleared.
It has been cleared. At the moment in time right now, it has been cleared by 2 groups.
Yes, and by the time the show actually airs, it may have been cleared by an additional group. So, you know, we'll see how that works out, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
Crossing fingers.
We'll get to... we won't pry you too much on that, since a lot of that last phase isn't super public. Only, like, bits and pieces of it actually are, and then FF logs from the World Second group is all the information we really have.
Yeah.
But we will ask you about how that's going at some point. But first, Slyh, how are you doing? How's your Ultimate Prog?
We're consistently making it to nail. That's good. For the times that I've been, and we've been as a complete static, we are consistently making it to nail, and it's fun. It's fun to say the least.
Smile.
Yeah.
I finally got 1 more day to Prague. Like, I got to do, like, 5 hours, which it's the first 5 hours I've done in a week and a half. And I've just seen the Quick March Trio, pretty much. Like, consistently through Nail to Quick March Trio, pretty much. And then I survived Twisters, but, you know, you need everyone else to survive Twister.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
You need everyone to survive, period.
Yeah, pretty much. Layla, where are you in the fight since we have you on?
Well, I think most groups in our position right now are kind of all at the same place, and we have all been at the same place for probably the last better part of a week. So, you know, I don't really have a problem talking about it. Our group, and I'm sure at least 3 to 4 other groups, are just currently banging our head against the enrage and trying to make the boss die and give us loot.
Well, I mean, that's better than 99.999% of other people who are in the game. So, yeah, I'd say it's pretty fair. Most of us kind of knew that already, because if you really dig into the mentality of Fold's memes, you can kind of decipher boss percentage based on that alone.
Normally I'm really hush-hush about, like, where we were at in fights, but I really do kind of noticed that it's pretty public knowledge where us and some of the other groups are at right now. So yeah, we've seen the whole fight for a number of days now, and we're just trying to make the enrage.
Man. All right. I'm going to ask one very simple question because I don't know the answer to it. I haven't looked at the FF logs very much for the World Second Group. How long is the fight? Because we've been having bets about this, of whether it was like going to be like 15 minutes, 17 minutes.
I can tell you, I mean, I guess...
higher or lower than 17 minutes?
Higher than 17 minutes. I don't think I have a problem saying it because the logs are public and anyone who would still be in contention for a high-ranking kill would be able to put 2 and 2 together because it's simple arithmetic. You know, you finish Terraflare at this point, we'll just add the remaining duration from the public logs. The entire fight duration is 18 minutes and 30 seconds.
That's brutal. I mean, that includes times where things aren't attackable, at the very least.
Yes.
Which includes, what, like, I guess 30 seconds of Phoenix included in there? So,
it's about 30, yeah.
Yeah, plus any... Well, I mean, I guess that's really only 30 seconds you have off, because, like...
Honestly, the machine gun style of the mechanics throughout the fight, really, Phoenix is the first rest break you actually have in the fight. You could argue that once you get really comfortable with the trios, a lot of those trios are kind of rest breaks. Like, I pretty much get a quick little power nap every time Fel Rune trio happens. Anytime Heaven's Fall trio happens, you know, we get our power naps in. But once you get to, you know, Grand Octet, you sort of got to wake up a little bit and be like, okay, we're back.
I saw a Grand Octet strat that was interesting. Then fault an LP3.
Oh yeah, the angered video, that was really funny. I thought it was very clever.
Oh, there's gonna be something real funny that you shared that I'm gonna share on this episode at some point.
Sure.
You know exactly what I'm talking about, Layla.
I mean, there's a number of things you could be referring to right now. So
no, the thing.
Okay.
And see, Slyh is out of the loop because Slyh doesn't know what the thing is.
Okay, so I'm gonna share this in our chat, and so here's before I show this to you, Slyh, because Layla's gonna know what I'm talking about immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Layla's comments were, before this, if any of my non-Final Fantasy XIV friends asked me what Final Fantasy XIV is like, I'd link them this GIF. And it is easily one of the greatest like, I've never been at a loss for words. I've never been able to see something in Final Fantasy XIV and go, oh, well, it's because of, you know, the server tick didn't go, or... You know, oh, well, it must have collided with the hitboxes on something else. Maybe that's still it, but I'm going to copy the link to this tweet to you. I'm going to share it in the chat, and then I'm going to show it on screen, but I'm going to need a minute to set it up. Would you call this a respite? Because this is one of those trios that... Which trio is this, by the way? Is this Fel Rune?
That would be 10 Strike Trio.
That's 10 Strike.
That's the fifth trio. It's, I guess, the final trio if you don't consider Grand Octet a trio, which it really isn't.
Yeah, Grand Octet is just like, hey, yeah, those guys disappeared however long ago.
yeah.
So Slyh has seen it now. I mean, literally, the way Slyh is responding, there is no other way to reply to this. There's quite simply no other proper response than his response right now. So can I pause this? I could take it off loop and then turn it on loop, I guess. Since it's a GIF.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So, I feel bad about that tweet because so I got that GIF off of Reddit and.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, so I took it straight off of a Reddit post. It was you know, really highly uploaded. But I think there are a few people on my Twitter who think that that's my GIF. That's not my GIF.
No, because that's not your character.
That's not my character. No. So I felt kind of bad, but at the same time,
it's comedic gold.
It's so funny. Like I had to share it.
I think it's funny because I feel like I've seen more than one source for this one specific mechanic. So this is 10 Strike Trio, which I don't think we had great footage of yesterday, of the last episode. Mm-hmm. But there's a point where hatch happens in 2 sets of 3, basically targets 3 people, and then it hits them, and then it goes again, and they can't get hit twice in a row, or they're gonna die.
More or less, yeah. That's essentially what's happening. You get a debuff once you get hit by a hatch. It's called like mana something or other, but basically it means you'll die from another hatch hit. It's a mechanic that exists throughout, I think, all of regular Twintania phase as well.
But it never, the hatches are so far apart that it never matters.
It never comes into play. And also, the debuff. There are a few times in phase 1 of the fight where you have to maybe kite the orb a little bit longer to wait for your debuff to fall off, but it's never an issue, really. This is the first time where
it's never
really
an issue.
Oh, okay. Well, it's usually not an issue.
It's never. Oh well, something else is an issue because it seems to really have a homing effect. So I have it on the screen now. This is what Claude. Is this Momo's group or is this a different group? Or
no, I don't know which group that is. I didn't actually see what group it is.
All right. Well, credit to Claude Achille because it's his character perspective. For this
Recalendar.
Oh god, now it's playing an ad. Hold on, I gotta mute the thing. Also, apparently, when you click loop, it doesn't do anything, so I'll just refresh it. There you go. So it gets hit by the first one. Someone goes to intercept the second one, and that hatch was having none of that, and... it's so
we were trying to wrap our heads around it, what caused that? And honestly, the only answer really is sometimes the game just wins.
I thought too, because I saw this one and I saw, he got meteor streamed right as the second hatch. Did it collide with Nail's hitbox and try to go around it?
I don't know.
But then I saw someone else. I saw this happened to a different group, and Nail wasn't meteor streaming them at the same time, and it still happened.
Yeah, so. I mean, there's definitely an answer buried in there somewhere. I don't see it right away, and I much prefer the more funny rhetoric of the game just did not want to care about you.
The game wins.
The game wins.
Game wins. Okay, so we've taken some time to unwind a little bit, dig into the topic, but I think we need to talk about your opinion on the fight as a whole. We can't pry you much for the last phase.
So, I guess my overarching opinion of just this fight in general.
Yeah, just emotion by emotion, and if I need to, I can reference Fold's tweet that he made, his twit long.
And he had a long tweet longer, yeah.
Yeah, and Slyh, if you have anything you want to throw in at any point, just throw it in, because you got a long way to go yourself. We both have a long way to go. I'm 7 minutes into the fight. You're 4 minutes into the fight, so.
So I mean, the best way to approach this question is really just to start from the top with Twintania and Nail.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
I know those two.
Right. Well, and you guys will be able to relate to this, so this is great. When we first zoned into Ultimate, looking back on it, how naive we were. I mean, it's just myself as a raider right now is not the same individual as myself when I first zoned into Twintania. That is so true for anyone who's progressed this fight for more than a week. We have really gotten back to some of the days of old that we have, Square Enix really actively trying to make our lives miserable instead of making them, a better place. I think that when you first do your first learning pulls on Twintania, things still feel in your control, and they're very manageable. It feels savage. I would say it's probably around the difficulty of a savage encounter in terms of pacing. The mechanics are pretty easy to dissect. However, the pacing of them, they're coming at you at pretty much a savage pacing. I think it's really, and Twin's been streamed to death hundreds and hundreds and probably even up to 1,000 times at this point. Everyone knows what happens. You dodge your twisters, you stack for your fireball, you do your hatches, you make sure your hatches don't cleave anybody, and it's to rinse repeat for 3 narrow links. Then you get to Nail, and I think Nail was where they first show you what kind of fight this is going to be. When a Heaven's Fall comes down, and not even 1 second later, he's throwing 5 Raven's Claws into your tank. That is when you first start to experience the pacing that this fight is going to be dishing out. And that's definitely probably what makes this fight difficult at times, just the insane pacing of it. The Nail mechanics and the Twintania mechanics, they're all mechanics that we're familiar with.
Yeah.
Historically. I would say the exception is maybe Doom and the Holy Dragon.
Well, no, I disagree, because that's the equivalent of the dragon that comes down during Heaven's Fall.
So it's basically similar to the Groat twists from the original Nail. They're just kind of, you could just consider them reskinned. It really is kind of the same thing.
And a big explosion to come with it.
Yeah. And so I think for all intents and purposes, it behaves pretty much the same way as the original Twin and the original Nail, just with a much faster pace and more dragons diving at you. Once you've seen all of Twin and Nail, you really start to feel like in control. Like, wow, I can do this. This is manageable. I haven't seen anything I can't do yet. This really it feels like we can really make some good progress on Bahamut. Let's make that nailed DPS check, and then let's make some good prog on Bahamut, guys. And that, I think, is where you could make the comparison of like, that was my childhood, and now my childhood is dead.
And back to Twintania.
And back to Twintania.
And then, you relive your childhood about 1,000 times in one day. But yeah.
Now, before we go any further, I want to get your thoughts on the whole nail RP mechanic, so to speak, because it's the first time that like I've seen something where you really have to pay attention to what, like, you can easily tunnel and not pay attention to what they're saying, because I've never really had to pay attention to what they actually say. Mm-hmm. And now we have to have like ACT triggers and everything to kind of make sure we don't tunnel. What did you think of the RP mechanic when you first saw it?
Yeah, so I actually completely forgot even about that. So I apologize. That is something that's unique, I think, to the Ultimate, in the sense that the mechanics that are coming out during are things that we've seen before, but never we had to deal with like an RP mechanic like you're saying. What it tells me really is this is their public announcement that they are completely understanding of the fact that the majority of their raid scene uses the third-party program ACT. I think that this is their like their public validation of, hey, we know what you guys are doing. Let's intertwine fight design here with what you guys are currently have at your disposal. And while that probably isn't their main intent when they were making that mechanic, like, oh, let's make a mechanic where they're forced to alt tab to ACT and make triggers. It's just something that I'm sure that they're aware of, and they know that most raiders are going to do. That being said, I don't think that ACT is necessarily a requirement for it, but man, it sure allows you to focus better on other stuff happening.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that so a lot of people don't know this, because a lot of people who are playing today weren't around in the really, really old days when Turn 9 Savage came out. But in Turn 9 Savage, we had to do something a little bit similar before the fight was quote unquote nerfed. People say nerfed. I say
thunder thing.
Yes, there was a double thunder bug in the very early stages of Turn 9 Savage, like literally the first few weeks it was released, where the only way to get through the mechanic was to read your combat log, because what would happen is Nail would send out 2 thunders, very similarly to how Nail does in Ultimate. Sends out 2 thunders. You have to split those 2 players up, and one of them was a fake, and one of them was real. So an easy way to deal with the mechanic was to identify which one was real and which one was fake, and the only way to do that was to read the combat log and see which thunder listed first in the combat log, because it was always the first one that was the real one. So I personally, Fold and I, we're people who have been around since the old days. We thought it was kind of funny, or at least I thought it was funny, that once again during a Nail encounter we're reading our chat log to get through mechanics. But yeah, I don't think there's any serious group right now that doesn't have triggers for every single Nail mechanic, and that doesn't just...
Or every single mechanic.
Well, we'll get to maybe some of that later. But the one thing I can say about all this, just in summation, is that the designers of this fight, and strictly speaking, the main designer of the fight, is well aware that people are going to use ACT to get through his mechanics, and he put in a lot of stuff for us to track.
Now, does this speak to general, PvE in the game when we're talking about like designers putting in stuff that they know we're going to use ACT for? And do you think that this kind of, tells us that something might happen from the developer standpoint, that, they're saying, hey, we realize you're using ACT, and hey, we're probably going to do something we're probably going to offer you a
tool?
A separate tool, so to speak, a official quote unquote tool, so to speak.
At this point, they might as well make ACT official, right? Just make it officially unofficial. But I
PS4
can't say
people,
sure.
Yeah, that comes
obviously that's where the conversation goes, right? It's if they're aware of this, they're obviously, for all intents and purposes, okay with it. Or are they gonna do anything on their end about it? I can't say for sure. I think that we have not seen the last of their HUD updates, so to speak. I fully expect the game to grow in user accessibility rather than decline over the years. So, with every expansion, we're probably going to have more user-friendly interaction with the HUD and the UI and the game itself. So I would not be surprised at all if they keep heading down the trend of aiding players in combat. We have the job gauges now, which are there for nothing else other than making our lives easier to track certain things, even though
for some jobs they added something just so you could have to track it.
And then honestly, it's at the beginning, the astrologian job gauge is honestly, I feel like more of a hindrance to your party than a help, but that's my opinion.
All right. Well, I'm of the opinion that if they're gonna do this ever again, this nail thing, because I fucking hate it. I don't like using ACT or ACT triggers except for tracking DPS during prog. Right. And I don't use I've never used an ACT trigger for anything. So for me, you know what I do? I make a fourth chat log and I drag it into the fucking UI.
And that's a completely fine way to do it. Back like I mentioned before, when people used to do Turn 9 Savage back in the day when it was first released, people weren't really as proficient with ACT back then as they are now. So we weren't really making triggers for it. We were just reading the chat log, and you can do the same thing here. You do exactly what you just said. You make a separate chat log that specifically is nail quotes only, and you just have one person focusing all their brain power and monitoring that and doing the raid calls.
You gotta look for keywords like scorched, fiery, conquest, red moon, blue moon. If
you discern the keywords, they're actually not that difficult to figure out. I guess the issue that teams have is, why should they care about doing that when ACT can do it for them? They can focus on all the other stuff going on.
Unless they're PS4 and they don't have a choice. They gotta hope. Well, somebody in the raid group does it and calls it out.
Yeah.
I love it. I did it with Keo, and he was calling them all, and I'm like, oh my god, fuck the chat. I'm out of here.
So great. Yeah.
Thanks, Keo. Fuck this.
Yeah. Oh, man. But I know I'm sure there are dozens of people listening to your show right now that
just a couple dozen.
A couple hundred dozen that are anti ACT and any third party tool. I just want to preface that it makes your life easier, but I don't think it's a requirement.
All right, so with that out of the way, those are two. Twin and Nail are topics Slyh and I beat to death. So now that we've gotten past that one, but no. But that specific topic was important for someone who's like, because that's not the end of the RP mechanics. You will see them again in the second or third trio. One of them, actually more than that, I think.
You'll see them recur many times throughout the fight, honestly.
So then we move on to the big kahuna himself. Is it wrong? Is it wrong to say that you really haven't started the boss until you get to this third part? Is that wrong?
No, that's fair. I do not think the fight begins until Bahamut Prime is targetable.
He is the actual boss of the incident. It's not, hey, beat all three of them. It's defeat Bahamut Prime.
Personally, this fight to me is not Ultimate Coil. This is Ultimate Bahamut. I really do feel that Bahamut is the sole focus of this encounter, and the fight length definitely reflects that.
Yeah, because at this point you're about 7 minutes into the encounter. By the time Bahamut hits the arena with 7th umbrella.
By the time Bahamut lands, you're around like 650. It depends on your DPS. I mean, we've been as low as 6 minutes. You can be as high as 7-8 ish minutes.
Yeah. And as we just stated, you still have over 11 minutes, including a 30-second respite.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the
It's a
length
long
of
fight, man.
That's the length of almost like Neo X. That's 12 and a half minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like a minute short of being as long as Neo X as a phase in itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically take X Death and Neo X Death and combine them into one boss, and you probably still aren't at 18 and a half minutes.
So that being said, so that brings up the interesting ask of checkpoints. Now, how do you feel if we get X Death Neo X Death situations again, which I think it's undoubted, I think we're 100% certain we'll see checkpoints in super long like final encounters again, outside of Ultimate.
Outside of Ultimate.
Are you for or against checkpoints?
I'm against. I think that. So, I'm torn a little bit because the 18 and a half minutes of a boss is utterly exhausting. However, I would not appreciate the prog probably as much if once I killed Twin and Nail, I never had to fight them again. And well, I shouldn't say never again.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
But I do think that checkpoints undermine what one of the purposes of this fight is. And one of the purposes of this fight is to reward teams who have high levels of consistency. This fight is not just meant for one type of team. You really do need a whole package to be able to get through this fight in its entirety. And one of the pieces in that package is having your team play consistent and repeatedly make it through mechanics that you've already seen and solved. And that's, just a part of the fight. So you would be losing that aspect of the fight. And I think that would be a little bit unfortunate because that's something that Final Fantasy has lacked in honestly the last 2+ tiers. Back in the days of Gordius and to a lesser extent Midas, consistency was really important. And
Brute Justice.
Yeah, I mean even less so Brute Justice more than like I'd say like A3 or A4 to a lesser extent. It's really a fight like A3 where you've seen the fight hundreds of times, you've solved it. All you need is to be able to get through the mechanics that you've already seen and solved for the 100th time and not make an error, so that you can make an enraged. And that's
nightmares.
Honestly, I compare it to maybe seven?
7? 7 if someone screws up, it's
no, wait. No,
for a different
6.
reason.
I'm sorry, 6.
Okay.
Oh God, 6.
6.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's comparable to 6.
Yeah, I mean maybe so in the sense that they're both kind of like they both feel like gauntlets.
Yeah.
And you need to get through each gauntlet consistency, and you don't see Vortexer in 6 unless you get through the other 3.
First 3.
Yeah, and so it is kind of similar. Yeah, I guess from that sense.
Sorry, when you talk about A3, it's just
PTSD.
so many nightmares. I will never unsee that health bar ever again.
Oh yeah, the 1%. Yeah.
I will never unsee that health bar whenever it gets brought up. Whenever Salt and Light spawns in the locks, I even turn on Locus just to remind myself, just to relive it. All right, so, but in Savage for checkpoints, would you still be against it? Like, would you have rather have had X Death and Neo X Death all be one fight with no checkpoints?
Because of what they did with Ultimate, I don't mind. And this might be a bit of a tangent for your show today, but
no, I think it's still relevant because it's been a big topic, especially with the Phoenix. What happens at Phoenix when we get 15 minutes in?
I think that with what they've done with Ultimate, personally, I feel Savage is looking a bit more mid-core than hardcore, and I think that the checkpoints are probably good for that. I think not having a checkpoint on 04 would make some groups struggle a bit more, when I feel like if they're going to continue this trend with Ultimate, where Ultimate is the thing that ruins your mood, you need some feel-good encounters in the game, and I would classify Delta Escape as a feel-good tier. So I'm okay with checkpoints in Savage tiers, but I don't think I want to see checkpoints in anything Ultimate.
We're gonna get to talk about like the ins and outs of raiding a little bit after we prod you a little bit on the Bahamut phase. So
No.
last week's show, we talked about everything through Grand Octet, and we didn't cover the Terra Flare phase. So, like, we said the Terra Flare phase is there, but we didn't talk about how the both the bosses return.
It's all been streamed pretty publicly at this point, so I can share whatever you guys are interested in.
So, Slyh, do you have anything that after last week or after things you've heard or seen, before I start asking things, is there anything you want to know? It could be a general question about the last phase or about the second to last phase or whatever you want to call it.
I would, but I kind of want to experience it organically.
You don't have to ask how to do Quick March Trio.
No. Like I feel like going into detail would, probably give me a little bit of a hint, so to speak. But yeah, I want to experience like the first, like once we actually fucking get there, I want to experience the first bit of time.
The first bit of pain yourself. Right?
Yeah.
I
want to.
You want to feel the same pain that we all felt. No, I understand.
Yeah.
So when 7th Umbrella hits and you all die, that's
Yeah.
gonna be that's gonna be the organic experience. I want you to know that. Just like the organic experience for Nail.
When you lose that really good pull to the very next mechanic that instantly wipes you when done incorrectly, that's the experience. Oh, rinse repeat that for about the next 30 mechanics, by the way.
Yeah. I wish it was hyperbole. And then it gets worse. We're gonna take in all the quotes from last week, and we're shoveling up there. I went to a random YouTube video and I saw that under and back to Twin Time. That felt real good to see that. I was like, I approve. So you get to Bahamut. So what was outside of being like, oh my god, I'm dead to 7th Umbrella era? How did it feel like when you got to Bahamut? Like what was the group's first thought?
We were half stoked, but also half focused. We were obviously the very first week of the fight. We were, really pressing for world first, and so we were very hyper focused on solving it very quickly because we instantly died. I'm sure most people instantly died to it when they got there. And we were trying to figure out, why we took the damage values that we did. And really, it's as simple as, we just needed to LB and not really worry about it. And once you actually looked at the damage values, it became pretty clear that that's all you needed to do. I think that aesthetically, it was obviously gorgeous. It was really cool to basically. Once we saw that that fireball egg hit the middle of the arena, I think it was Chia that said, "You guys know Bahamut's going to come out of that thing, right?" And we're like, "Oh, you're actually probably right."
It's called 7th Umbrella era. That was my first reaction.
Yeah. Just the fact that there's a mechanic in a fight called 7th Umbrella era was pretty impressive. They've really gone all out with the scope of the mechanics in the fight, and you guys will definitely see that once you see the later stages of the fight.
Okay, so Bahamut spawns. I think I want to know your first reaction to one specific thing about Bahamut becoming targetable.
Yeah.
Because I think any raider that's trying to gauge what they're in for will probably look at this first. His health and the number and the rate at which it declines.
Mm-hmm.
So upon seeing he has, I think 13.75, I think is the number.
13.4, 13. Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. What was, after seeing that Nail had 5 point something and Twin had 5 point something, where did your mind go at where you actually thought you were in the fight?
Oh, right where we thought we were, basically. I mean, we kind of knew going into it that Twin and Nail were probably a bit too easy to be considered, the actual fight. Once we saw the HP value of Bahamut, we kind of knew okay, this is the real guy. And that really did reflect kind of what Yoshida and crew were selling before the Tiri came out. Bahamut is the real dude here, and the HP value definitely tipped off to that.
And then Flare Breath Flatten Trio.
Yeah, so the first time we get to Bahamut, we managed the Flatten Flare Breath combo, pretty easily just because it's Bahamut, done it 1,000 times before, Bahamut Prime back in the day. You can always expect that he's going to breathe fire on you and flatten your face. So we got to that, and the Quick March, the first time we saw Quick March, we seen it from one of the previews that they did before the patch. So I kind of knew like, okay, these guys are really going to just dive down the middle, so we just need to, deal with that accordingly. It wasn't until we got to the wall and we're like, okay, we're safe. Mechanic done. And then a little green swirly thing pops onto your left toe and sends you and all your loved ones around you flying into a wall. And that, I think, is the real beginning of the fight. It's that single twister that says, okay, you're starting the boss now.
Yeah, and it doesn't even come close to being the tip of the iceberg there. So when it comes to trios, one of the big topics is how the boss literally becomes untargetable. Everyone basically resets for about 5% of the boss's health, and then comes back, do 5% more, comes back 5% more. Was that, did you appreciate that you weren't attacking the boss during this time, or were you kind of like, all right, could you stay around for longer than 15 seconds before we have to just do a slew of mechanics again?
I didn't mind, mostly because I kind of knew where it was going. I had my assumptions, at least, of where it's going. That okay, for every trio, they're going to be wanting us to do a certain amount of damage here, and making sure that you maximize those small windows of times that you have, like that's fine to me. I think that the Bahamut Prime phase is really more of a test of your ability to outlast Bahamut than anything else, more so than it is to do damage, because honestly the damage check really isn't that difficult. And I think that it rather than having him never be targetable and just have it be like a dance with nothing at all, I think it is good that at some points he still is targetable, because it allows us to utilize things like reprisal and dismantle and addle and stuff like that to get through some of the mechanics that he's doing. I think it would be kind of lame if we can never ever target him. Like go the opposite side of the spectrum, where just have a dance like a brute justice intermission.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Not have anything to target. I like that we can at least target him and do some of use some of the debuff utility that we have. But having him targetable the full time would mean that he's on the map the whole time, and when he's on the map, he wouldn't be able to do all the things that he's able to do outside the arena. So it would make some of the mechanics probably either easier, or they'd have to come up with new ideas for those trios.
So in a matter of speaking, you actually prefer a whole endurance race as opposed to the sprint of, him just being, available all the time for you to hit while doing mechanics.
Only because I know that that's not the whole fight.
Okay.
I know that this dance gauntlet style of the trios is really, it's not the final phase. People know it's not the final phase. And when you're going through it, I never assumed it was the final phase. My only other alternative theory was that, okay, once we finish the 5 trios, the boss will be around 50-ish%, and then the true final phase of a 50 to 0 burn would happen. And for all intents and purposes, it's kind of what happens, but I don't want to go into too much detail there.
Understandable.
Yeah, I don't dislike it or like it. I guess I'll say, because I was okay with it because I knew it wasn't the whole fight.
So you talk about how they'd have to have done things differently. There's a lot of Bahamut mechanics that kind of aren't present from Final Coil itself.
There are.
Are there any that you kind of wished were incorporated in some way? Obviously, it's asking a lot when there's as many things going on as much, but I'm not saying on top of that. I'm saying just ones you would have liked to have seen that kind of made the original Bahamut Prime.
I was fully expecting to see all the Mercidia ads that we saw in turn 13. You had the Pain of Mercidia, you had the Gusts of Mercidia, you had the Sins, all those things from the ad intermission in the original turn 13. I was fully expecting for those to make a cameo in Ultimate. And I was a little surprised that we didn't have any phase really interacting with those. I was fully expecting to see the orbs from the second phase of Bahamut. The Flare Stars. I was fully expecting to see those, and having to manage those debuff stacks while doing all the other bullshit that Nail and Twin are doing to you. That to me, I think, would have made a really interesting trio. But overall, I can't complain. There's still a shitload they threw at you, so I'll get over it.
And I think technically the only things really missing are Flare Stars, the ads, and I guess him being around when doing Mega Flare Towers. Like, you know how like you used to have to maximize uptime while doing towers and stack points and all that stuff. And they've already established this isn't a maximize uptime. It's a maximize uptime fight, but not while the boss is there, or not while the boss isn't there.
Yes.
Kind of thing. All right, so we've got 5 trios. Let's name them off, because I had trouble naming them off last week. We have Quick March Trio.
Yes.
We have Blackfire Trio. We have Felrune Trio, Heaven's Fall Trio, and 10 Strike Trio.
5 for 5.
5 for 5. Which one of those trios was the worst to prog on? And not necessarily because you had to, because I know, like, progging on 10 Strike Trio isn't the same as progging on Quick March, because you had to do 4 trios to get to 10 Strike, and then die, and then do 4 trios again. So, objectively, in a space where if you just had to do one trio, which trio was the trio that you would say was the hardest?
So, hardest to execute or hardest to solve?
You know what? Which if you want to do, if you want to do both, like one of each.
Hardest to execute, I think, is probably, funnily enough, probably Quick March. As easy as Quick March is to kind of like dissect, at least for a tank. I'll preface this. I think most tanks listening will agree with me who have done the fight. For a tank, I think Quick March is probably the most difficult. Once you've done them all like 100 times, really none of them are very difficult to execute. Some of them are harder to break down than others, though. And I think that's the key difference between them. A trio like Felrune entirely depends upon your Neuralink placement. It can either be the easiest trio in the world or the most difficult one in the world, depending on how you...
For people watching, what is the order of mechanics for Felrune? I think I know which one, but since we're not showing them this week like we did last week.
Felrune is the basically where you have the 3 bosses in the middle of the map, and you have Nail do an RP. So it starts with either a Dynamo or a Dive, and whichever one it starts with, the other one happens afterwards. So if it does Dynamo first, then it'll do Dive second. If it does Dive first, it'll do Dynamo second. In conjunction with that, you have Twintanya channeling the Etheric
Perfusion.
Etheric Perfusion, which is the mechanic you need to be standing in a Neuralink to survive. And you have Bahamut sending out 2 Tempest Wing tethers. So you can imagine the way this plays out is you need to get the 2 Tempest Wing tethers to their own Neuralinks to survive the Etheric Perfusion, so that you're not clipping anybody with your tether. And you need also the party in another Neuralink, because you're limited to 3 Neuralinks. So you need the party in another Neuralink away from those tethers. But you have to be balancing that with the fact that Nail is doing stack and spread mechanics. So you have to like do stack, spread, and then spread out to your Neuralinks in whatever fashion your party deems. And if you have really awkward Neuralink placement, which a lot of teams did, because a lot of teams just did whatever placement got them through Twintanya the easiest and didn't think much about it. It was really only like the very, very, very dedicated teams that were started like guessing, why are these Neuralinks still here? What are they going to want us to do with them later? And they really start guessing like where they should be placing them in phase 1. I know that our first set of Neuralink placements made Felrune a nightmare. It was so difficult to get people inside their Neuralinks for the Etheric Perfusion while also getting dealing with the Nail mechanics. If we had a Dynamo second, for some of our arrangement in our early pulls, it was impossible to get a player from inside the Dynamo to a Neuralink. And conversely, like even if you wanted to leave a player outside of the Dynamo, it was still difficult. So we had to change our Neuralink positionings twice until we got Felrune completely solid. And honestly, now it's probably the easiest trio.
Now, going back to that a little bit, what did you think of them using such a, well, I wouldn't say such, but just a persistent mechanic that you had to make use of throughout the entire fight from phase to phase to phase? We kind of expected it to happen because they were just there. They were just there the entire time. But what did you think of them, you having to set it up properly in the beginning, and then make use of it in like final Bahamut phase.
I like it. First of all, it is a great reason for not having a checkpoint, because what it really does is it really gives meaning to the first phase. It gives meaning to that twin phase in a fight that where otherwise the twin phase would be very meaningless, and you would really be wanting a checkpoint at that point, just because it's such a drag going through twin when it has no bearing on anything else in the fight. So I think it was a really cool design choice to have a very boring first phase interact with the rest of the fight to that scale, and definitely I think important for how the fight goes. It's also just another one of and I'm sure they knew that this was going to happen, that people were going to have to reassess how they do the Twintania phase once they get to these later parts, and that's something they want in Prague. There's a lot of occurrences in this Prague where it's very clear that they want you to sort of go back to the drawing board and reassess things that you've already learned, just because it kind of like elongates the process, and they really liked that.
I remember them very specifically saying, there's something you can do to get through Twintania, but you'll regret it later. And that ended up being limit breaking Twintania to then not have a limit break for 7th.
Could mean a bunch of things. Could mean limit break, could mean Neuralinks.
It could be Neuralinks. Yeah. But they very early on told you there are things you can do to make Twintania easier, but you're going to regret them later.
Exactly, and that's I think an important aspect of the fight, and definitely something ultimate.
It's quite ultimate. Definitely unending. That's for certain. Okay, so we're talking about the 5 trios, but to some people, Grand Octet is the 6th trio, because it's another mechanic that contains the 3 bosses, but it also brings back the 5 dragons from the nail phase.
Right.
Grand Octet has been an interesting topic, because it's probably, from what people describe of it, mechanically it's super straightforward. It's like the most straightforward of all the mechanics. There's 8 dive bombs, or there's 8 different dragons dive bombing, and there's markers going out. Towards the end of Grand Octet, that changes a little bit. There's other things to do, but that's kind of the grand takeaway from it.
Yeah.
Compared to progging on the trios, what would you say was the one major difference with Grand Octet?
So I mean, Grand Octet threw a lot of groups for a loop, some more so than others. But I think that it's the first octet that's not super intuitive, in the sense that, like, yeah, you understand there's dragons diving at you, so that means you want to make sure you don't send dragons into other players or places you need to be. Like, that's a very simple premise. But the first thing everybody did when they got there is like, are they going clockwise? That was the very first thing that people looked at. And I know on our very first poll, we saw them going clockwise. So me being the dive bomb marker for our team, I was like, I got this, guys. Just let me handle it. I got this. And because I'm really confident in marking dive bombs. And I know when we got back there and then I saw them going the other way the next time, I was like, wait, how do I know which way they're going? And that was like the first puzzle, I think, for teams to solve. Can you discern whether they're going left? Can you discern whether they're going right? Or can you not discern it at all? And I know a lot of teams, ours included, for that first day or so, just went with strategies that sort of accounted for both cases, and didn't really bother spending time figuring out, like, is it going left, is it going right? Well, no, we'll just make a strategy that accounts for both. And a lot of teams sort of brute forced it that way. The problem is, and we all know this, that the problem was that it was sort of a volatile measure to get through it, and not nearly as consistent as you're going to need when you're trying to deal with an 18+ minute fight.
That you still don't know is 18 minutes, because you're not even 11 minutes into the fight yet. You're not even 11 minutes at this point.
You're like around, you're around 11 minutes. You might be a little bit over 11 at that point.
I remember seeing the Terra Flare, a group posted, they were dead, like, going into Terra Flare, and they were at 11:10.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's, okay, sure. That probably checks out. You're probably around, like, the 10:30 mark around Octet, maybe. Definitely the dive bombs, I would say. But really, the yeah, I think that was the first like thing that kind of stumped teams was how do we deal with these dive bombs, and anyone that's past it now, and most people are, most people who are in there every day are past it now. It's another example of it's a very simple mechanic that you shouldn't try to overcomplicate. And that's really all I'll say about the matter because I don't want to spoil it for say Slyh who wants to experience it himself.
Damn it, Slyh!
It's a fun mechanic. It looks like a very fun mechanic.
The solving of it will be a fun process, and I wouldn't want to take that away from somebody.
Okay, thank you.
The basic functionality is of the mechanic is that there's dragons diving at you, and you don't want to get hit by a dragon.
Right.
And yeah, I think it's the first mechanic that sort of paused groups prog for a while. There are some groups that whizzed right past it, and there are others that didn't. So it was very hit or miss. I think that while it was sort of like disheartening to some of those groups who got stuck on it a little bit longer, what was hilarious to watch unfold is just how much it all evened out and normalized later on in the fight because of how much more difficult the later on in the fight is.
And it only gets worse.
It only gets worse. That's the moniker of this fight.
Even when you're done with the dive bombs, you're still not done with Grand Octet is the worst part.
Oh no, yeah. Honestly, and I was going to get into this, but I got distracted. I guess the dive bombs are really that's the easy part in my eyes of Octet. It's what happens after the dive bombs that I think was the real struggle. At least for our team, it was a little bit of struggle because we, I think, didn't give ourselves enough credit, and we essentially there's a strategy, or not a strategy. Essentially, there's a mechanic, and I won't spoil too much. There's a mechanic that involves Mega Flare towers, but and it's something that if you've done Blackfire Trio, it's something you're familiar with. There's towers, and people need to be in the towers. And for Blackfire Trio, you can make a very easy to follow like priority system of this role always gets this tower, this role always gets this tower. The wrench in all of this for the Octet phase is that the tower locations are completely random. And you can have orientations that are far from your party and orientations that are right up in your party space. And making a priority system for that is a lot more involved and takes a lot more brain power. And I think that we, and maybe some other people that I've talked to, but definitely we as a team, focused a little bit too much on trying to make that a clear-cut priority system, when in reality, the best strategy of all is YOLO.
Just YOLO.
Just call
YOLO
out,
actually
this is
works.
my tower, get the fuck out. This is my tower, you take that one. That's the best strategy of all.
I'm trying to grab, because what you're bringing up right now is goes perfectly into something that Fold twit longered about. That was not memeing.
Yes. I fully expected his twit long to be a meme, but when
I totally did too. The problem with finding exactly here it is. I had to look for the words 2100 words, which by the way, this wasn't even remotely close to 2100 words. So either he trimmed it or he meant to say 2100 characters. And
I think you meant characters.
Which we all know he totally didn't trim it. But it's a giant twit longer where at this point, Momo had been very, very publicly outspoken about something in the final phase being complete bullshit RNG that shouldn't exist. And he said it was, quote, worse than Nisi.
I mean, you can interpret Momo's RNG complaints probably a number of ways. I personally didn't feel that they were related to the final phase just because I don't feel that way about the final phase. I think that's I don't know what he was referring to, obviously only he does, but I think that his tweet is much more applicable to Grand Octet, just the towers in general in Grand Octet.
Which is why I'm bringing this in now as opposed to when we get to the later part.
When we were doing Octet with our team and trying so hard to make it like a very clean priority-based system like we always do with every mechanic before, we always try to have these clean strategies that are very like intuitive for a player. Oh, I'm the bard, I go here. I'm the healer, I have this debuff, I go here. That's always like when you're able to do that, it's always the best way to do it. However, in an instance like this where there is so much RNG happening in a span of 5 seconds, it is so much for a player to process his role and responsibility that it is so much easier to just look at your screen, make the logical decision of he's closer to that tower than I am. I'm going to let him have that. It is just what it reminds me of, and this is the analogy I use for my team to sort of like sell it, is it's turn 9 golems. You know, when you're placing the three golems in turn 9, you kind of just fan out like logically, right?
Yeah, you don't be like, okay, you don't set a priority system for like each person.
Oh, you're closer to that circle, fold. I'm gonna go over here. It makes way more sense for me to move here than to ask you to move 2 circles that way. And you just apply that same kind of logic. It's just be smart. That's all there is to it. Don't do something stupid, and that's really the best way to do it. And what it does is it really outlines something that this fight is going to teach not only us but other teams of the importance of personal responsibility when they're in these more difficult encounters. Personal responsibility is becoming more and more important with the more difficult the content gets. And this is this is one of few fights in the game that is really, really, really focused on personal responsibility and just making sure you make a right split decision rather than having a all-encompassing omnipotent strategy.
Yeah, I can respect that. I think I can think of a few other examples, but hearing this is yeah. So Fold did this twit longer, and the one key point he talks about is mechanic consistency and what he calls fatigue walls and artificial difficulty. Mechanic consistency being something like you just described, where those towers could be anywhere. And he says these are designed to be fatigue walls that become very apparent when your team is showing signs of what our static calls sleepy boys. So he did meme a little bit.
There's a little bit of a meme there. Yeah.
And I would like to spell that out for everyone. It's S_L.
Sleepy boys.
Sleepy boys. But he's more specifically, he gets serious immediately after. He talks about how many of those fatigue walls exist. Twin Tanya as an entirety is a fatigue wall. Darkness is a fatigue wall. Quick March Trio is one. Each and every one of the trios is one. Octet is one. And what comes after is still all part of one encounter that has so many fatigue walls. So where do you stand on that portion of the fight with the sheer number of fatigue walls over an 18.5 minute fight where, guess what? You're seeing this for the first time. You're going to die. You need to get there again and again and again to figure it out. And every time you die...
And back to the time.
There you go.
Fold's my guy. Love Fold. My response to it is, man up.
Damn, son.
Man up, pull again. Let's go.
Let's go. That's how see what you don't understand, Slyh, is that's what he's saying to himself right now to get ready for raid night tonight. Man up. We're doing this tonight.
Yeah.
Tonight
I think
is the night.
You got to get through it. Everybody's got to get through it. Everybody's going through the same things that you are. Just man up and get through them better.
Yeah, because then he goes on to talk about Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say at this point, like from my perspective, our raid leader, he's like, okay, back to Twintania, pull again, start the countdown. Nature's Men, pull, just go. Like we're just at this point we're chain pulling just to see more of the fight. We don't want there to be any quote unquote fatigue or any like lulls in between pulls. We just really want to keep seeing the same mechanic over and over again and bang our head against it so we can see it. So I kind of understand what Fold is saying, but at the same time, Layla, I definitely understand what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I definitely do also understand what Fold is saying there, and to an extent, I do agree with it. I think that what he's more so emphasizing is the fact that he feels that I guess the fight length and some of the RNG in a few areas of the fight is just there to basically force you to make a mistake and start your Twintania over.
Yeah.
And that's like just a measure to elongate the fight's prog that Square Enix put in the fight. I guess that's what he's trying to sort of emphasize. And the only thing that I would preach to him, and I have, and to the rest of my team, and to anyone else who asks, is it just puts more emphasis on requiring consistent play, and consistency being one of the big keys to success in this fight. And the teams that are going to clear this fight and the teams that have cleared this fight are the ones that are going to be the more consistent ones.
Do you consider that type of quote unquote design, if you want to call it that, do you consider that intelligent design based, like in terms of this stage of raid, this difficulty of raid? Do you consider like them intentionally? Yeah.
For Ultimate, I do, only because Ultimate is exactly what they told us it was going to be. I mean, it is everything that is difficult in one fight, and you couldn't have a fight without having a quote unquote fatigue check, like they do, and not have a complete fight. This fight was designed to be, it's literally, as the name implies, it was designed to be the ultimate encounter. Like there should be nothing more difficult than this fight. That's I think if they started their meetings about what they want to do with this encounter, the first thing, if I was in that room, I would write on their whiteboard is there should be nothing more difficult than what we're about to create. And I think if you go from there, and it seems like they did start from there, having stuff like this is just a logical choice. A long fight that is going to drain you mentally and physically, and force you to either take a break or reevaluate a strategy to make it simpler.
Okay, so there's 2 points you just brought up that I want to hit on. The first one is the concept of this being the ultimate encounter. We already know ultimate is not a one-off.
Yeah, we've supposedly, yes.
So what the hell do you do after that?
So I've been a little cynical. I don't think that they're going to be able to match this. Personally, I wish that they prove me wrong, but I don't think you can top what they've done this fight. This fight is massive on a grand scale, in more ways than one, in appearance, in mechanic difficulty, and in length. It has it all. I'm a very big supporter of this encounter, as you can tell probably by now.
Right.
I really do enjoy it, and I think it's one of their best pieces of work they've done, even though I hate them for it and I want to die every time I start Prog. But it's a
reasonable.
love-hate. Yeah. I think that I don't know what to say.
I always like the muse that they said that they were going to do Titan, and that Pseudo said no, it has to be Bahamut.
Yeah, Bahamut is okay. So Bahamut is obviously, that's like the poster child of this game, right? That's
right.
What
rebirthed the game.
Yeah. It's really what everyone sort of associates Final Fantasy XIV. The first thing we think of Final Fantasy XIV rating, most people think of Bahamut, I think, and because that's what the game was about for so long. And I don't think they wanted to win people over, first of all, with this fight. They wanted to do something that was going to like capture eyes from all areas. And by the way, for the record, it has.
Oh yeah.
I play WoW quite frequently, and I can tell you guys that in the WoW circles right now, Ultimate Bahamut was a big topic of conversation, even on the Blizzard side of things. The Blizzard fight designers were eyeing Ultimate and commenting on it on Twitter about how difficult it looks and how much of an interesting concept that of the fight is of Square Enix not being afraid to release a fight as long as this, because they're looking at it from their angle of like, well,
what do we do?
What do we do? Yeah,
my fights. Is this a good idea or a bad idea? So they're looking at it with a quizzical eye, and some of the players over in other games are looking at it with a very interested eye as well.
When you talk about from like where we go from here, like Mike and I have had this conversation. The only basis we have in comparison to this is what we dealt with in just regular raid and standard raid, and you can kind of argue from Coil to Alexander. There was a bit of a discrepancy in terms of difficulty. People, yeah, really.
Sly, I went from Final Coil Prague to Gordius. A bit does not accurately describe the difference in experience I had between the two.
Then from that perspective, it would pretty much be easy to say like where you could go with this. I mean, you could just, based on the scale, you could lump up like all the Gordius bosses together and create one ultimate fight from that. I say you can't really do it with a primal. Like a primal, like Titan would be a fan favorite. Titan is kind of like fanatical more than just, actual reasoning behind a fight. Honestly, I think Alexander would be the way to go, even though I would be interested in seeing
it's ultimate Faust, and he summons Manipulator and Brute Justice as ads. All right, we've been over this, Sly.
Yeah, I agree that a primal is not going to. The problem is I think they did need to start with Bahamut because they really needed to sell this idea. I mean, this what they're doing is they're selling the future. I think of their game right now.
Right.
And I think that Ultimate, while people are most of the player base, I think, is like annoyed at just how difficult it actually is. I think while they're also annoyed, they're still also very appreciative of how difficult it is. I can't speak for them. I don't know, and I'm sure there's going to be many people angry at me on YouTube for even saying that, who are just having a miserable time right now. But I think that you can't follow up what we've done with a primal.
Not one primal, at the very least.
Not one primal.
Okay, that's where I was going to go. Exactly. On the other hand, they have shown that they are completely okay with bringing together fights and mechanics that you never thought would coexist. Hear me out. Ultima weapon.
Yeah, I've seen so many people throw that around.
Warring
Triad.
Warring Triad is my
I've heard
idea.
Ultimate Gilgamesh, where it's Gilgamesh, Enkidu, Ultros, and Typhon.
There is a lot they can do there. That being said, the Raider and me would love to see them just sort of continue the trend of the tiers of we had Ultimate and then Coil, and then we go into an Ultimate Alexander in 4.3. And then by 4.5, the Omega tier, the Omega storyline will have finished. We'll have all three Omega tiers. Finish it off in 4.5 with an Ultimate Omega. You could go that route.
Does Neo X-Death and Sephiroth look like at the same time?
Yeah, my concern is that formula might get stale. I think that the idea of something fresh each time, like we're getting at here with these primals, that would be something completely out of the blue. That would keep it real fun and interesting for people. I don't think people are necessarily gonna want to go back all the time and just fight the same raid bosses that they clear every week again.
Right. Now, go ahead.
I just want to say, what does an 18.5-minute Titan fight even look like in their eyes? Let's assume they had gone with Titan first.
Yeah.
Remember what Xeno designed?
I did it too. They even stated my exact idea that I've been championing for years at this point, where it splits the platform into 4s and he does the jumps and lands on each of them and then knocks them out of the fight for a certain amount of time, and if you fuck it up, you're done. But then that's not 18.5 minutes. There's no Phoenix that comes flying in and resurrects you at any point.
There's no way they could just do one primal. It'd have to be like a primal medley. It really would.
And see, that brings me to my next question for you. As a WoW raider, and there are a lot of people who play 14 and WoW, council fights. This is the closest thing we've had to me to a council fight. Would you prefer this style what we have in Ultimate, or an actual, council fight?
Well, one of the phases in Ultimate Bahamut is a true council phase. You have multiple bosses in the field at the same time. That's been publicly streamed for anyone who's aware.
That's Terraflare, which we'll talk about in a few minutes.
Yeah, the Terraflare phase is essentially a council phase. And I actually went on record, and I will unfortunately have to take an L here, but I went on record a couple months back, saying that Ultimate Bahamut will be the first time that tanks are required to cross-class ultimatum.
Hey, the World First group did.
They did. I feel like that was more of a backup.
If you die, if you provoke and something goes wrong, you need a second provoke.
A lot of people do use ultimatum for having an extra provoke for shirk purposes and an extra provoke just as a backup in case one doesn't work. Because you can, without ultimatum, if you use your provoke and then die, you can't fix it when you get raids. I mean, if you die in Terraflare after using your provoke, you cannot fix it. It's just like there's so much ridiculousness you have to do to fix it. You have to have like your ninja throw a shade walker on you. You have to get a really heavy shirt from your main tank, and you there's just so much that goes into it to fix a pull where you don't have provoke. So I feel like him having ultimatum was more so a leisure than a necessity. My co-tank and I have mulled it over, and we really can't see a need for it other than using it as a backup or using it for shirt purposes.
But getting to the topic of the council.
Oh yeah. So I think that a council fight with multiple primals would be really fun. And I think that the Warring Triad could be one of the perfect segues into that for that style of encounter.
God, I just imagine Sephiroth slamming a side of the scale.
Yeah, I think. Oh man, I mean, you're selling it to people right now.
And then while Zervin's soaring, there you go.
Yeah, there's a lot they could do that would be fun. I just want them to continue the trend of the machine gun pacing of mechanics. I think that's the most important defining factor of Ultimate. No matter what they do, whether it's council or single boss, the mechanics have to come at you fast, and like you'll see it unfolds to it longer there. One of the things he highlights is he is very uplifted to see Square Enix's ability to make a fast-paced fight in an often slow-feeling game, and I think that that's what Ultimate needs to remain.
Okay, so we've diverted away from the topic of the fight itself to cover some pretty, I'd say, constructive topics regarding the raid and its state.
Hopefully interesting.
Hopefully. I mean, we don't know if this show's any good. We've been doing it for this long, but we don't know. So the next...
I blacked out for an hour. I don't know.
Yeah, I've been sleeping the whole time, so I don't know. You got to let me know when the full thing comes out. So for after Grand Octet, I'd say Grand Octet signals the end of Phase 3 for me personally.
For sure. Yeah, I'd say it's a 5-phase fight personally.
Hear that car? Come on now.
Yes.
Thank you, Los Angeles.
Bahamut got another one.
There you go. That person's honking their way back to Twintania. There you go. You move into Terraflare phase. Now, last week we super undersold Terraflare phase because we had no footage of it, so we couldn't go into it.
Mm-hmm.
Terraflare is basically you need to defeat Nail and Twin before I'm done with my Terraflare cast. Is essentially the phase in a nutshell. I think they both start at 50% health as opposed to 100% health, so they've been resting up a little bit.
44.
What a weird number.
40. I can't remember it. It's
what a weird number.
I space out every time we get there. I don't even look at their HP anymore. I think it's like 44%, something like that.
So speak to us a little bit about that. That has also been publicly streamed. Once again, we were referencing 5150's like clips all last week. They've streamed up to Golden Bahamut and died to the last phase, so people have at least seen what the mechanics are in the final phase, or at least the first however many seconds of them. So Terraflare, this is a whole phase on its own where this is where you're finally putting Twintania and Nail down for good.
Yes. Terraflare honestly it seems very overwhelming, but it's really not that bad. It's honestly when we get to Terraflare and a pull, my blood pressure returns to normal levels. It's once you map it out and once you figure it out, it's very manageable. Once you're looking at it, and I don't want to spoil because I want Slyh to experience it Sky to experience it, Slyh to experience it organically.
You'll get it.
I struggle through that one. Sorry. Once there will be a point in the Terraflare progression where you will just collectively as a group say, "Are you serious?" So, and I wouldn't want to ruin that moment for Slyh. So, once you get past that, you then sort of start to manage things and understand how things are supposed to interact, and it really kind of doesn't become an issue at that point. It becomes very less daunting and much more controlled than some of the previous trios that you might have just been dealing with.
I'm trying to think of what that moment is. I'm thinking very, very heavily about it. Because I know I felt that way when I saw the phase start, I felt that way. But I think of the tank. I think of Death Sentence and Ravenspeak, personally.
Well, I want to say something, but I won't.
So I'm onto it. All right, I got it. I'll just accept that because I feel like you right there.
I can assure you that is not what I'm referring to.
Okay, all right. That's what I was just like. All right, well that's fucking fun. Have fun doing that shit in this game. So if you ever feel that way, like it's like, oh yeah, have fun doing that in Final Fantasy XIV in this fight.
Yes, Octet felt that way, very much so. I was actually going to make a very angry Twitter post, but then I realized that I was being a whiny little bitch and decided not to.
And you didn't want to be fooled.
No, but it's like one thing that while I was driving home from class, I was thinking about. It was Octet was sort of this phase that was designed for a game that isn't Final Fantasy. And having the RNG of the towers and like needing to YOLO it, well, not necessarily needing to, but having YOLO as being a very good strategy for it, is a fantastic and completely fine way to do things. Final Fantasy is not a game where YOLO strats typically work well. A lot of times you'll see somebody going one direction. In reality, they're probably not really going that direction anymore, and they've doubled back. Yes, exactly. Another one of those issues, and that is why, for the record, why teams try so hard to make priority systems for everything that they encounter, because making split second decisions and reacting to stuff you see on your screen typically does not work very well in this game. However, like I mentioned at the very early stages of your show today, us and I think some other teams really undersold ourselves. I think that players are fully capable of being able to make logical decisions, even if the game isn't as up to date on your screen as it is, server side. You're still able to react in the time that they allot, and that'll be an important lesson, I think, for us going forward. Do not always shy away from the fact that maybe sometimes we just need to react.
All right, so Terraflare phase is 3.5 minutes, approximately 4 minutes, something like that.
Terraflare is much shorter than that. Terraflare.
Oh, is it?
I want to say 2.5.
2.5. All right. Oh, fucking Christ. All right, so you got 2.5 minutes.
On paper, that doesn't really sound too bad.
That's 2.5 with like the minimum level of DPS requirement.
So it could go faster, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you go fast. You could do it. You could do it in 2 minutes.
All right, so shedding 30 seconds. That's a pretty substantial difference.
It entirely depends upon your party composition, honestly. The party comps with classes that specialize in multi-dotting are going to fly through that phase faster than the ones without. Summoner Bard, technically. I guess both of them probably shine pretty hard. What do you know?
What do you know? Yeah, multi-dotting. I could demolish 2 targets.
Yeah, and I think Chaos Thrust is worth it on 2 targets, I'm pretty sure.
Which one? What's worth it?
Chaos Thrust from Jiggy.
I think almost any of the dot, because they're as long as it's not applied and you can apply it and you won't drop an auto attack.
Yeah, I haven't played Dragoon in a long time, but in my head I think Chaos
Thrust is fucking strong, dude.
Yeah,
it's real strong. So you get past Terraflare, and you die.
Yep, fight's over. Back to Twintania.
Yeah, or so you think.
Spoilers.
Oh, come on. We were already actually guessing this last week because I remember somebody saying that like Fold or somebody else had mentioned that. I don't know if they said, "Hey, wouldn't it be funny if this happened?" and then it ended up happening, or if it was like, "Yeah, by the way, yeah, I totally guessed right."
Yeah, you and 10,000 others.
Yeah. So at this point, there's been one entity that's been completely missing from the encounter, and that's Phoenix, who we know is present in the fight. Whether it be because apparently in ACT he gets added to the encounter list.
Yeah, something like that. His name pops up and he has like an HP value. It's the same as like a tower and stuff. So people started theory crafting. Yeah,
he had 5.75 million health, and he pops up in your combat. In the encounter list in phase 3 when Bahamut hits with it becomes targetable with 7th Umbral Era.
Some people feared that was going to be the true final phase, is you have to fight Phoenix, and that's why the fight is like 20 minutes long. But
not wrong entire. I mean, you're not fighting Phoenix, but the fight was still almost 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is Bahamut wipes everyone out. You're all dead. And then Phoenix says, "I'm here!" And resurrects you.
He Falcon punches Bahamut.
Yeah, he literally Falcon. He's literally like, "Ah!" Like,
pretty cool, honestly.
Yeah. And then he just leaves like an asshole, too. He's like, "I'm good. I'm just good. I'm out."
He doesn't leave without leaving something behind.
Yeah, he resurrects everybody to full health, full MP, no weakness. But you still have to recast Protect, by the way.
That's actually not true.
Oh,
If you have weakness, this is really stupid, by the way. I don't mean to derail your train of thought, but
Yeah.
if you finish the Terraform phase with weakness, when Phoenix resurrects you, you not only still have weakness, your weakness is fully reset to max duration. It is so stupid. Anyway, continue.
Okay, but the intention of it is if you don't have weakness, you will not get weakness from this.
Yes.
So it just doesn't shift over to Brink of Death. It's just
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Although you do need to recast Protect, which is...
All buffs.
Yeah, you have to redo all your buffs, pretty much, in the, like, I guess 15 seconds you have before it becomes relevant again. And Phoenix gives you a buff called Phoenix's Blessing. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people were really curious about exactly what the extent of said buff was. With this FF logs that we have from the World Second Group, we can get an idea.
What are you thinking?
Well, let's go to the warrior, because that's fun. So Fell Cleave was 26% of his damage. What was his highest Fell Cleave? His highest Fell Cleave was on Bahamut Prime, which I guess isn't... I guess it's not exactly the largest one, but his average hit was 27.8k, whereas on Twintani it was 17k, whereas on Nail it was 12. So... when you more than double what your Fell Cleaves were doing on one boss, going into another one, when only half of the fight against said... I guess this is actually only the very last phase, maybe? So,
Yeah.
It looks like it straight up doubles your DPS.
You would be correct.
Yeah.
Phoenix's Blessing is an 100% damage increase.
And there's a 26k broil in here.
Yep.
Yeah. So that lasts, however much percent Bahamut has. That, not fucking around. Bahamut,
No, sir.
Now, the other concern is that Bahamut has a buff of his own. One called Los Die, which we saw early on the day the patch went live. People saw the buff on XIVDB, and it says that Bahamut's insanity has peaked and that his damage has increased. One might assume that has also doubled his damage.
Well, I would say so. There's actually two buffs happening there. There's Los Die, and then there's just a raw damage up buff. And I don't actually know Los Die's interaction with the fight itself, other than maybe signifying that
he's golden.
He's golden. The damage up buff is essentially a 10 times damage modifier on Bahamut. For all intents and purposes, it's probably not exactly 10, but look at the values. You can eyeball. It's pretty much he's doing 10 times damage. So that was a very interesting find.
Yeah, and I still don't know. I actually don't know the cause of said buff, so I'm gonna leave that out.
There are the teams right now that are progressing golden. All I'm sure know. I think because it's a little bit more difficult to figure that out from just raw public logs. Yeah. I'll keep a tight lip on that. But it is there and it exists.
All I can tell you is that Bahamut's doing a lot of damage in this phase.
Bahamut is doing a lot of damage.
And more interestingly is what abilities he actually has access to, because the answer is not a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's public knowledge now that that's the final phase, and everybody progressing through this fight sort of had an ability list already data mined. And once you get to Terraflare, you know that there's only three abilities left in the list, and he introduces them to you very early on in that final phase.
As soon as he goes into the final phase, he casts a new ability called Mourn Afa. Now, according to this, Mourn Afa is responsible for 45% of Bahamut's damage during their kill of this phase.
Sounds accurate, yeah.
Which is more than double of what his auto attacks were dealing, which is the second highest value.
Yeah, yeah, it's autos are hard.
which is a frightening prospect when not only are your auto attacks the most, you know, one of the most damaging things.
Yeah.
Over 31 auto attacks, it did almost 400,000 damage to one tank, and over 7 auto attacks did about 100,000 damage to the other. So the average, it looks like, it's about 17,000 per auto.
It's a lot of damage. I know that in those logs specifically, both of those tanks were pretty much stanceless through that majority, if not all of that phase. So the damage values are against basically stanceless tanks. But it's
38 autos. Jesus, that's not a lot of autos for 3.5 minutes.
Well, he's got a bunch of other stuff he's throwing at you.
And by a bunch of other stuff, you mean Mornifaw, Ockmorn, and Exaflares.
Yeah, a lot of those.
Now, I'm not going to pry you on how to do these mechanics.
No, I wouldn't answer.
But we know what they do, at the very least. Mornifaw, splitting damage.
Mm-hmm.
Ockmorn being, well... Ockmorn. And Exaflare being emptiness from Neo X-Death. But with its own... It's the most comparable thing.
I would say it's a little bit more than emptiness, but...
It's more, but like if you had to like look at it
is,
and draw a conclusion as to what you could relate it to, emptiness is like the
very first
closest
thing that everyone says when they see X-Flare is, oh, emptiness.
That's not it, but that's the closest draw to it. There's
the most similar mechanic we've seen.
And when you see that on paper, it doesn't seem that bad.
Oh, man. Easy phase.
It doesn't seem that bad, but you just talked about the fucking damage.
Easy phase, Layla. Why can't you kill it?
Easy phase. What's wrong, man? Look, I mean,
they
they only had 2 deaths. They had 2 deaths to this can't be right. 2 deaths to Mornifaw 19 minutes and 9 seconds into the encounter. I wonder if it's counting the... I don't know how ACT works, if it counts like before the countdown or something like that, or...
It's possible that the 1830... See, I have my ACT segmented because I like to see...
it might be 1830. Okay.
I don't actually know the full fight duration. I just know the actual lengths of each boss themselves because I view them individually. Because I only care about their individual enrages.
Right.
So 1830 was just a number I pulled, pooling those together. I thought it was. If it's like in the 19-minute range, then no.
Yeah, because it's funny because they lost, and you can also tell. So I don't know exactly how Mornifaw operates to an exact degree because I didn't watch 5150s, but it's interesting that it is the very last Mornifaw that kills those 2 people. It's at 1909 and 1912, and 1912 is actually the time they killed it at. So they literally had the Dragoon die, which tells me that could be an enraged Mornifaw, which I don't know for certain, but that's all I can glean out of that. And then it doesn't kill. It's not an instant. Hey, that makes it sound like chain lightning to me. When I hear that makes it sound like
I will sit here none the wiser.
None the wiser. That sounds like chain lightning to me. Like it hit one guy, killed him, bounced the next guy, bounced the next guy, bounced the next, and then killed somebody on like the 4th or 5th thing. Because I mean, but if it stops at any point, it like becomes a disaster. Hello, camera. But that's...
Or maybe it's just one of the issues where like that we've seen throughout the fight.
I don't think we've ever seen one ability hit and take 3 seconds to kill everybody. You know, like how like people die gradually sometimes when you like hit enrages. That's what you're talking about.
No, I'm just saying a general thing where one person dies and then it's a mechanic where it requires certain amounts of people, and then
Ockmorn is so it hits more like Ockmorn that hits more than once, and like some people live through the first one but they died to like the second or third one, or
and then it shifts over to the next person in threat or whatever.
Man, that was always great back in the day with Ockmorn when like one of the tanks would eat shit and then Ockmorn would eat the other tank alive and then slowly one by one eat everybody, because it was, those were fucking fantastic times. And then Nidhogg brought it back. Then Nidhogg brought it all back. And that's all we know. So from your perspective, how does the last phase stack up after everything you have to go to get to it?
Mechanically, the last phase is pretty simple, I feel. I think that it's really something that people will have to see for themselves in terms of why it's difficult. But it is a fairly difficult phase to get through because of the raw numbers required and coming at you. And I think that's like the biggest, I guess, thing I can share about it. Mechanically, I think that most teams saw it 2 to 3 times, figured it out, and then they've just been banging their heads at it against it.
And by banging your heads against it, you mean being consistent for 15 and a half minutes
yeah,
before you even see it.
Exactly. That's the thing. One of the things I tweeted about the other day is one of the reasons that Prague is going so long for some teams is the fact that if you think about the duration of this fight, upwards of 18 to 19 minutes, on a really good pull, which is like a really deep golden Bahamut pull, you're only getting, on average, about 3 of those an hour. If you think about it, you spend 18 minutes in a fight, die, spend a minute and a half to regroup, set up your markers and stuff again, then pull the boss again. You can do that about 3 times in an hour. And then that's all you get. If you're only raiding for 6 to 7 hours a day, that's 15 to 18 pulls on golden in that day. And that's assuming those were all really good pulls and there wasn't any spaghetti anywhere, and that just does not happen. So I mean, the number of times teams see golden in a day is pretty limited, I'd say, unless you're going the full 16 hours, which only 2, I think, teams were for the second week. It's teams aren't seeing golden as much as you might expect, I guess. Yeah. Unless you're playing really well and you're like really rested and really focused.
In which case you've beaten it and you're no longer going back to Twintania.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which has only happened twice at this point. All right, so that's ultimate. That's the whole thing. A fucking nearly 20-minute encounter.
It's exhausting, man.
I'm speechless.
I'm getting exhausted sitting here thinking about it, and I haven't even started raid for the day.
Yeah, you gotta raid when we're done. That's why we're doing this show at a time where I'm normally done with stream at 2 p.m. PDT. We started recording this at 2 p.m. PDT to make sure you had time to not only do this,
which I appreciate,
and rest beforehand. Which is a good thing it's not till 5, because otherwise you wouldn't be getting much time right about now.
Yeah, I'll probably go lie down for like 30 minutes or something after the show and just recoup.
That is a good call.
That's a good idea.
So, as a raider, you've got this encounter. You have seen all 19 whatever minutes of it.
Yes.
How do you even go into the next Savage raid tier? Like, how do you even like go, all right, guys, let's get excited for Savage?
I joked about it, and it wasn't really a joke. I truly do feel that Savage content is just mid-core content at this point.
Now, being mid-core doesn't necessarily mean it has to be bad.
No, it does not. I guess I thought that was understood, but I'll clarify that it's a classification. It's not a class or in a hierarchy. It's just mid-core content typically doesn't require the hours that more hardcore content does. And I personally don't think that the current tiers of Savage that we've seen in the last 2 tiers have required much time investment. So that's why I label it as sort of mid-core. And I don't think that future Savage tiers will be much different. I think that if they view this ultimate fight as a success, this is what we're going to see as a norm. I think that Savage content is going to be accessible, albeit difficult for the player base. They won't just be able to one-shot it like they can normal modes, but that'll be where you get your loot and what you grind for your loot every week, and it'll be enough of a difficulty to remain interesting to most players. And then for the people who really, really, really want a challenge, that 0.1%, every 6 months we'll get 7 Titans to fight.
Titans. It's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
Now, going back to something we talked about the other week, or something we showed off, Frosty had a chart.
Okay.
About
I don't have the chart handy right now.
Yeah, you don't have to have it handy right now, but he had a chart about the mentality of how you felt about the fight as time progressed.
Oh, I know. I saw that. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your level of optimism / pessimism right now, knowing that you're really close to pretty much clearing this fight?
I'm dead on the inside, dude. I'm dead. This fight, I think, so I've been getting a lot of questions directed at me because I think where people became most familiar with me was back when we had success in Gordius. So that's what a lot of people associate me with, and I get asked frequently over the last 2 weeks, I'd say, about how does this compare to A4? How does this compare to A3? Compared to A3, I think A3 looks like a joke compared to what we're doing right now. A4 and this are both extremely difficult, but for very different reasons. The machine gun pacing that we're dealing with in Ultimate, A4 can't hold a candle to. In that regard, A4 is a joke when you compare to this. The pacing of mechanics has never been seen like it's coming in Bahamut right now. And I think that's true across many MMOs. I personally feel that in terms of raw difficulty and raw just personal responsibility and mechanical prowess you need to kill this boss, and I've done a lot of WoW raiding people are familiar with, this is the most difficult encounter I think I've ever done. And my opinion of that may change over time, but when I put everything together, I think that this is the most difficult encounter I've done. When you have a fight like A4, some of the difficulty in A4 was just the fact that you didn't have enough gear. And once you got enough gear, it became a little bit more manageable. I think A4, a lot of it you were battling the fact that Heaven's Word was a bit new as well. We weren't entirely proficient with what tools we had available to us, like we later became. So you were dealing with that. So it's just like apples and oranges. You can't really compare them. And I've lost complete train of thought of why I went on this tangent. So direct me back home, please.
That's Sly's question. It's all you.
Yeah, I was asking what your mentality is right now.
Okay,
what level of optimism or pessimism do you have?
I think we've got our answer.
Okay.
I think the tangent tells us where you sit.
I went off rails, man.
No, that's okay.
Get the jacket, dude. Like, what are you waiting for? You're losing your mind.
Yeah, I think this is a very difficult fight, but at the same time, I'm really appreciative of it. It's pushed me like no fight has in the last year and a half, and I think that most players who get through it are going to say the same thing. This to me really feels like 2.3 did, where at the beginning, where entering 4.1 and leaving 4.1 players are going to be entirely different, and this fight will change the player base, for better or for worse. It will change the player base.
Humble some, empower others.
Yes.
Because when people left 2.3, man, Bahamut didn't stand a chance the next match.
Yeah, exactly. We got really, really good after Savage SCOG. And then, it's one of the reasons that FCOB, the Bahamut tier, got 5 dayed.
Yeah, damn, 5 days. Neo X Death took 16. It's really weird. I think Neo X Death is the harder fight than FCOB, but gods have... Yeah.
There's a couple of reasons for it. We have CD resets now, and CD.
Oh my god, that was where I was gonna go. That's exactly what I was leading with that topic, Layla. Yeah. You took the words right out of my mouth.
CD resets, and also people are just a bit more coordinated now than they were back then.
Yeah.
So CD resets. I was just gonna bring that up. Can you imagine doing this without those? Because I'd like to remind you that these are all three of Twintania, Nail, and Bahamut were all encounters that were made and progged before CD resets were available.
I think I guess I want to quickly retract my no. I think it would be manageable for the tip top teams, because what most teams doing right now, to save money, I don't even pot anymore on Twin and Nail or Bahamut. I only pot on Golden.
I have 700 pots ready to go.
The other phases are so mapped out and so easy to execute that you don't need that kind of stuff to make the DPS checks. And you really don't need cooldowns to make them either. We actually pool all of our cooldowns, not all, but at certain points of Twintania and at certain points of Nail, we don't use any cooldowns just because there's no need.
Yeah, I know people were doing that for because Nail you have 15 seconds straight right at the beginning where there's no responsibilities other than the Raven speak, so people pull them at the end of Twin to do that at the beginning of Nail, and then the same with Bahamut while he's doing Flare Breath and Flatten.
Pretty much, I'd say pretty much.
That's accurate. So, but even still, can like CD resets?
It would definitely suck for the earlier stages of Prog, I think. But now I think that's what would happen. It would be really, really, really difficult to like learn Twin and learn Nail without CD resets. But once you've got them like really well practiced, you don't need CDs for them.
You heard that, groups. If you're still using CDs on Titania Nail,
I mean,
No, don't.
They'll be available
but
later.
okay, let me be clear. And you're working on Bahamut.
Yeah, I mean, you can use them because they'll come up later, but just make sure you have them when you need them later, because there is a point where you actually do need them, and typically that starts with like Terra Flare, that sort of phase.
Dude, I don't even know what. I just want to do it. I want to do it. I gotta find a group that is going in every fucking day for 12 hours. That's what I need right now. 2 weeks in, I don't give a shit. Find a bunch of no-lifers.
What a naive response.
I know.
You go in there for 12 to 16 hours, dude, and you come back and tell me how you feel.
I would love to. I loved it for everything except A4. A4 Savage, I could not fucking
this is a whole nother beast, man.
stand.
This is a whole nother beast.
I'm ready.
Take those 12 hours. I'll deal with my 3 days and 3 hours.
I can't. I'm fiending.
My concern is that I don't like. So obviously, there's a ton of people in Sly's position right now where they're just in there for single-digit hours per week, and my concern is like,
can you beat it before 4.2?
I don't think it's going to be possible to. I mean, obviously, keep trying and prove me wrong, but like, my knowledge of like how you're going to kill this fight is you need to be chain pulling to get as many Goldens in one day as you can, and hope that one of those Goldens is the magical pull. And if you have a limited number of hours per week, you're gonna get very few Goldens, and it's like you're gonna have very limited time for the stars to light. It's not like you can just wait longer and longer into a patch and you get more gear and you get stronger, and eventually your gear will help push you over the edge.
Right.
It's not like that at all.
That's not going to be true in 4.2. 4.2, you'll get through the phases faster with the gear from there, but if you can't do twisters on Twintania and you can't do fireballs on Nail, like, you're fucked.
I'm very skeptical about
casual
unsyncing.
Oh yeah. So one thing that I really hope that they do, and they failed this.
Oh, we had this discussion.
They failed this with Escob. One thing that I hope that they never do is allow this fight to be unsynced. That will very much ruin this for me. I'm trying really hard right now because I want to, do this content that I view as very prestigious, and it'll mean a lot to me to have it under my belt, and just like it'll mean a lot to everyone else who gets it. And I felt like one of the worst decisions they made for Realm Reborn was allow Escob Savage to be
unsynced.
Done it unsynced with high level gear. Because that really just took.
They didn't even item level sync it. I did it in 110 and then I did it again in 130.
I'm hoping that they at least item level sync this. Item level syncing obviously isn't perfect in terms of how it translates.
Materia,
materia and stuff, and just the overall scaling of things. But it's good enough to where the fight is still going to be so difficult that it would still be very prestigious.
Does that matter going forward with other Ultimate fights as much, though? Like, if an Ultimate fight's coming out every 2 patches, is it as relevant that every single one of them remains at that point? Like, because if you do it for one, you got to do it for all of them.
I mean, I personally feel it does, but obviously people will have their own opinions about it.
Yeah. Because the thing is, I'm of the opinion that unsync it all you want. Like I said, if you can't do twisters, like, you'll get through those phases faster. If you can't do Quick March Trio, you're still fucked. Like, the wall's going to kill you.
I guess my issue becomes what it will do to the final phase. It'll make the final.
Oh, you'll go into the final phase. You won't even make it to the final phase. Like, unless he hard pushes at like a percentage, like, you'd probably kill him before he even gets there if you were like 5.0 item level kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just thinking about that right now. I'm going to assume that you cannot kill him before Golden.
I'd have to imagine there's a hard wall in there somewhere. Like, even if it were mathematically possible.
I'm pretty sure if you get him to 0, he just stays at 1.
That would make sense. Until he actually turns Golden Bahamut.
I'm pretty sure that's how Brute Justice behaves as well.
Thornton behaved that way as well.
People have skipped the second intermission of Brute Justice. I have heard that. I've never actually tried it myself because I haven't gone in there undersized, but I've heard that people skip the second intermission, and so I would assume you just get him to 1, and then maybe he.
Well, Brute Justice is a little different because he still has another phase after that. Like, you can't skip Winged Justice.
Yeah, I mean, it's without giving away too much. It's not much different.
Okay. Well, yeah, because I mean, Brute Justice recharges his full health. All right, well. There you go. I was like, well, it's a little that's still okay. All right, so that covered. I can't think of anything else. We fucking talked about it for 3 weeks now. I'm spent on the topic.
I just want to do it.
I'm spent.
I just want to fucking do it.
I just want to do it.
And I think from Layla, from what you're saying, we will have at least one day where we just have to read to our schedule and say, hey, we're gonna do full hardcore day of like 8 hours or so, just to get enough pulls.
Like, once you get the fight like fully mapped out and you feel comfortable with and you understand all the mechanics, like I wouldn't mess with it before then. But once you get to that point, I really do think that the best choice for people in your position is just going to be set aside a Saturday, go 8 to 10 hours, and just grind it.
Get as many golden behemoths as possible.
Yeah.
Right.
I like calling it that.
Like, so again, we can kind of assume, and that's what I'm calling it right now, assuming. At this point, even mid-coring would be kind of difficult, but like you really, there's no way you can do this casual.
Yeah,
from what we discussed.
Not without like an item level boost, I feel like, in any like timely manner.
Okay.
I just wanted to go in, dude. I'm willing to do hours.
Somebody else, some fantastic team out there will prove me wrong, make me eat my words, but it's going to be extremely difficult for them if they do.
You'd have to be like skilled god tier, and then watch the video and like map it out before you even go in.
That's one thing is you have to have somebody else map the fight for you, and then you just go in and execute. That's the reality, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so with that out of the way, I think we're done. I think.
Are you sure?
Are we done?
Sure?
Slyh, do you have anything else?
Do you feel
I just want to do it.
that you're done, or is the
this show unending?
I
knew it.
I mean,
I was like, nope. I'm taking it. I was gonna use that one.
Okay.
I mean, once Mike and I probably clear, we'll probably talk about our perspectives.
Oh,
like,
sure.
Yeah. Because
I'm not doing a whole other fucking show on my perspective. No fucking way. It's been 3 shows.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
I don't need. Slyh. We're not doing another show on Ultimate.
Okay.
Next week, Rival Wings is likely to come out.
Hooray!
Do like a reaction video to like a kill bot or something.
Well, but I mean that's not a show. I don't need a show on that. They're like, hey guys, watch my kill bot.
That's a segment. Like our perspective is probably a segment, so it wouldn't be a complete show, but it would still be part of another show.
I do have one final question for Layla though, and it's not about what he thinks on Ultimate and all that shit. It's one very simple question.
Okay.
Are we getting a thoughts breakdown video when you are done?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
And a live stream.
Yes.
And a live stream.
Yeah,
definitely be that a live stream.
Yeah, I mean, I always like doing those. People, from what I understand, enjoyed the ones I did for Heaven's Word. I didn't do one for Deltascape just because personally I didn't feel it was worth the time. This is definitely something I would want to like. This is definitely a fight that I feel like would be worth the time, so I would put something together.
Damn, Deltascape, you got something for that sick burn there?
And apparently, all Layla felt from Deltascape was emptiness.
Yeah, pretty much, man.
Hey.
Like Fold, early on in our Bahamut Prague, Fold was joking around about us going and doing our weekly clears, and
I haven't done them. I haven't bothered in 2 weeks.
I haven't done them in 2 weeks, and we were describing what the experience of like going from Ultimate Bahamut to like 01 would be like, and it's like you're dealing with these mechanics coming you like 1 second after another, just machine gun rapid pace, and then you're fighting 01, and it's like 20 autos, tank buster, look out, don't get clamped. It's like not even the same game.
You sleep through 01.
That's what those FF log challenges are for. Just need more crazy ones, like the one where everyone has to get hit by clamp. And...
Watch
I don't
out,
even think you
there's
can
ice.
I don't even think you could like create something on the like with 01 comparable to something like Ultimate. Like you would have to do a lot. You have to get really, really fucking creative and think of, well, okay, don't move during.
You're not allowed to move the whole fight. Fuck.
Yeah, you're not allowed to move the whole fight.
You can only relocate with skills.
Coming back and doing O2. Watch out! Press the extra action button. Oh, you have 6 seconds to press it. By the way. Watch your feet.
And then you pug it and you realize life is not so kind.
Oh, okay. I guess I wouldn't know.
I pugged those for the first 5 weeks of the expansion, so those were fun times. Those were great.
It wasn't too bad.
Nah, you're right. It wasn't the worst. Could have been.
Yeah.
It could have been a lot worse.
When there's a tier that's huggable, it's really not that bad.
Yeah, dude, you pugged 04 Savage. You should know. That's what I'm talking about. All right, so Layla, at this point, we're gonna do our outros, but I want your outro if you have any. I don't want to say final words because it makes it sound like you're gonna die.
I might. Man.
I mean, yeah,
but
I might, man.
At the same time, you're going in again tonight, and it's been almost 2 weeks, so you might die. So
yes.
Do you have any final thoughts and where people can find you at?
One thing I guess that I'll do in my outro that I would feel bad if I didn't is I want to give a shout out to Lucrezia because
they're not Lucrezia right now though.
Well, for all
Lucrezia Prime.
intents and purposes, we're calling Lucrezia Prime. Whether they want to call themselves it or not, I think they don't want to call themselves Lucrezia just because they're not being managed by Dark Wasiria, who was the head of Lucrezia before, so it's different management. Obviously, they want to associate themselves differently, and there's probably not even much management that goes into it. From what I understand, they're just a group of friends who do very well together. But 6 out of 8 of the members are from my old school rivals in Lucrezia, and I've never been happy to lose a race. But I was as happy as I could be to see that it was them who won. Because those guys are what really got me into... Them and BG are really what were the carrot on a stick for me getting into hardcore raiding in this game. And to see them back was it lit a fire, a kindred fire in my soul. And just made me happy because it made me feel nostalgia, honestly. Because I like seeing them do well, and I like seeing them competing and stuff.
Cut you off, I want to show the art of the Legend Returns real quick.
It's fantastic, right?
Fantastic.
That's
for anyone who is unfamiliar. Lucrezia claimed world first on first coil Bahamut. I'm sorry, on most of the Savage second coils, most of them, not all of them. I think 3 of the 4. I think 6 was the only one they didn't world first.
I actually think that they might have world first at 6 as well.
Just never said anything.
I think that who would be the other group? Was it Collision?
I'm pretty sure Collision was the actual world first of turn 6.
What I actually remember looking at this one night with Fold, and I can't remember exactly. It was either they were right behind Collision, or there was actually confusion, and they beat Collision by a few minutes.
Is this where the meme came from?
It's one of the places. One of the places. I won't get into that, but yeah, What we can say for sure is that they were the first team to 4 out of 4.
Yes, absolutely, because they did 6, 7, 9, 8. I think was.
No, they did 6, 7, 8, 9. They went in order.
They went in order. Didn't they have 2 different groups? That one group went to 9 when they were in 7. I thought that's how they did it.
I don't think that was. I feel like that was another FC. That was actually Death and Taxes. That was my FC that was doing that. At the time, we split up the.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I was back in D&T at the time before I joined Collision. But yeah, Lucrezia, world first, getting 4 out of 4 Savage titles. World first, turn 13. They beat us.
World second in Gordius.
World second in Gordius, and then...
Anger hopped into the... Oh wait, who was world first of Midas?
I retired them to League of Legends.
What? Who was world first of Midas? Was that Anger?
Yours truly.
It was you? You guys?
Yes. I'm,
I don't remember that for some
I'm
reason.
glad I'm so forgettable.
I mean, for me, the whole Midas race kind of didn't sit very everyone. I just remember Gordius for what it was, and everyone remembers Gordius because of the whole sack strat when your video fell out versus Lucrezia's. Final Coil, everyone remembers because it was like
It was epic. It was Final Coil.
Yeah, it was Final Coil. Second Coil Savage is the same way because it was Second Coil Savage. And everyone remembers BG for Twintania because of the debacle with Twintania. Mm-hmm. Nail BG because they were fucking completely quiet until they beat it first.
Yeah.
It's just, but Midas just kind of it was just a race that just kind of went normal. There was it was so normal of a race, I don't remember the order of the kills.
Man, maybe from your guys' perspective.
I mean, just compared to the third, I was just when I think of it, Twintania bugged for 2 months, had to go offline because people were breaking it, and Twisters and all those problems. I remember Second Coil because it was the first time we had anything even remotely close mechanically in the game because it was brand new. Savage was the first time they did that. Final Coil was the last one. Gordius was a fucking shit show, and then Creator got railed on for being too easy.
Yeah.
So all of them had such external factors that make me remember them. But Midas is just Winged Justice was fucking amazing, and I just don't remember. I do remember having you on the show now and asking you about the fucking chair, but
No.
Yeah. the chair
sure.
and the whiteboard, I think it was. Yeah, so I do remember those. I just didn't
All
remember.
Midas timeline, yeah.
Yeah, that's all Midas timeline. So I remember it, just I didn't remember it till you said it.
There was I'll save this for another show because I don't want to take up all the time, but there was a lot that went on behind the scenes during Midas Prog, such as Square Enix screwing over all the week 1 groups out of sands and oils because they didn't set the loot tables properly, and then they had to hand deliver to teams that had already cleared sands that they had missed so that we could actually get our gear. There was a lot of things that went wrong from all sides during Midas, from bugs to things not working properly in terms of loot, and then also massive disconnecting issues when the feast was being implemented in the game.
Oh yeah, it was that time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Bit of a nightmare of a tier, honestly, but one of my favorite tiers. So.
Yeah. I forgot where we were on topics. Oh, you were giving your thoughts about Lucrezia, about being happy of any place of any team to lose to a group of mostly ex-Lucrezia members was the perfect team. That's where we left off.
Yeah, very fond of them. They've always done well anytime they compete, and happy to see them hopefully stick around. Other than that, I guess my closing thoughts would be that I hope that people are supportive of Square Enix branching out to a 3rd difficulty. Ultimate is not perfect. I don't think they care personally. I think that I think its name is Kenneth Sudo. Is that
Kenji Sudo?
Yeah.
Sudo-san.
I'm pretty sure that his intent and what he was told by producers is to make as many players suffer as you can, and he's done a fantastic job at that. So I tip my hat to him. I love seeing what they're capable of. Honestly, they've had to hold back for so long, and not be able to show us what they can do when they, turn the faucet on full blast. And it's really fun to see just how difficult they can actually make something. So I hope that people are supportive of a 3rd difficulty. It's possible we'll never see anything like Ultimate Bahamut again. But if we do, I hope that people enjoy it in some capacity, whether it's watching it on Twitch or doing it themselves. And yeah, I guess time for shout-outs or no?
Yeah, no, time for shout-outs. If you're done, then yeah, it's time for shout-outs. Go right into it.
I would like to obviously shout out Elysium, Free Company, and my raid team. Elysium has been a huge support to us this tier, more so than any tier before. We've had a lot of people basically supporting our. We've had a more reduced schedule than we're used to, so we've had to bring in some helping hands to sort of combat that. And I would especially like to thank Keo and John for putting in extra hours with us that they have, and Goka for also being involved. And I would like to shout out everyone who's enjoying Ultimate, like I mentioned before, and I hope that we have more enjoyable races in the future, and I hope to be a part of them. You know, one thing that I will say is that it was a big question mark whether or not I was going to be a part of this quote unquote race, and whether or not it's devolved into something that isn't a race at this point, and more just like getting across the finish line, which is what it kind of feels like. I am happy that I am a part of it, because I do think this is one of the best pieces of content that they've put into the game ever. So happy to be part of it, and I hope that we continue to enjoy it.
I was gonna say something real quick there, and I can't remember what it was. It's bothering me. And it's something to do about it being a race. And I can't... Oh! It was Yoshi P telling you had to. But not for...
Yeah, I forgot about that. That was, when I met him in San Francisco.
Yeah, he said, so world first, right? I remember you walking up to me afterwards and telling me, and I was like, so yeah, there you go. And he's like, I feel like I have to now.
How can I not now? Like
I don't have a choice. Oh, Yoshi P. Never stop being you, please. All right. Now,
quickly, thank you to you and Slyh for bringing me on today. And,
thanks for making time, because I know that with the fight not beaten yet, that any moment not spent in there is one you cherish.
We're not able.
Thank you, and thank you for all the insight, because like I've really just been drinking all this in.
You guys are thirsty for it.
Yeah, because I'm obviously not hardcoring. Mike wants to. He wants to desperately hardcore this. I don't have the time. We're gonna have to set it like you said. We're gonna have to set aside that day when we get that close to where we have to do like 9 hours or 8 hours or like just one Saturday or one weekend, whatnot. But like I'm thirsty for like a lot of time into it, because I feel like the times that we've been getting as a static, like we could have, if we really would have hardcore this, we probably would be a lot further on than we are now. Like we're still in Nail, we're still in the beginning phases of Nail, and just hearing all the insight from what you've been seeing in not necessarily just Nail, but in like the entire final phase, like it's making me thirsty to really want to get back in and just like sink my teeth into the content.
I tried to leave just enough for you to still enjoy it as you go. Yeah.
and sorry to everybody who wanted to hear this is how this happens. This is how this happens. Sorry.
It's still fun.
I still haven't seen it. Mike hasn't seen like a few things, but like we still haven't seen a lot of the fight, and I don't know about Mike, but I want to see it like in my own time.
Oh, I want to see it in my own time, all right. But my own time hasn't involved actually doing the fucking fight, so it's been 2 weeks now. I've been in there for fucking like 12 hours total or some shit.
Yeah,
I'm dying.
For me.
I'm dying. At least I've seen Bahamut. All right, whatever. Slyh, just fucking tell him at this point. Oh.
Well, you can find me on twitch.tv. Damn it, Mike just sounds so fucking dejected right now. That's the funniest thing. You can find me on twitch.tv/Slyh, aka Greyfox. You can find me on Twitter at Slythefox. You can find me on Instagram at Slyh, aka Greyfox07. You can find me on YouTube, youtube.com/thevelvetroom. Nothing really coming up other than, a lot of GT Sport, little bit of Prague here and there. Big schedule change coming up next week, but that's pretty much it.
Nothing coming up. Big thing coming up.
Yeah. I mean, that's... Yeah.
Alright.
Mike, where can
just Mr. Happy 127 fucking anywhere. I don't just Google it.
Okay.
I don't fucking know.
Right.
Just Google it.
Just Google it. Just fucking Google it. I'm not in ultimate. I'm not in unending right now. That's all you're getting.
That's why he's so sad right now.
I'm just busy fucking playing .hack and fucking Warframe and not do, because when I log into 14, I'm just like, oh great, I'll go do my Coach and Beast Tribes and then not do ultimate. So I'm gonna log out now and cry. Pretty much. It's been my experience for the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, right now my only purpose of logging in is ultimate.
I want that purpose. I don't even have that. Okay, let me do fucking Alliance Roulette on my Black Mage. Great, we got Dunscape and everyone fucking fell off on the first boss. Great. That's my fucking life right now. I want to do Ultimate. That's what I want to do, and it's not what I can do. So instead now, and Final Fantasy 15 Comrades got pushed back to next week, and then Final Fantasy 11's 15th anniversary is this week, and it's like, I just want to do Ultimate, man. This is so bad. This is so bad. And Layla's over here like, you naive fool.
Do you know what you're getting yourself into?
You know. I know. I've seen it. I don't want to do it. All right. On that note, though, I think we're gonna get Layla. We'll go let Layla lay down before his prog, and Sly can get ready for his stream this evening. There's no post show this week because of the nature of doing the pre-recorded show. So thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next week, where it's gonna be one of two shows. It'll either be a PvP show with Rival Wings, if that gets confirmed as releasing next week, or it'll be Air Zivia.
Is it really around that time for Air Zivia?
We're like 3 weeks late, dude. We usually do it after like the second or third week. We spent 3 weeks on Ultimate. It's behind. We got to do it. It's coming.
Okay.
It's on its way. Thank you again, Layla, for joining us.
Thank you.
Go get some rest. Good luck finishing the fight tonight.
I appreciate it.
We will see you next week, everyone. So bye-bye.
See you next week.
Hey everyone, for the outro of the show, it had been almost 2 hours, and once again, the message for the sponsors at the end, should have done it at the beginning, but doing a separate recorded segment here to thank those of you who have been supporting the stream over on Patreon. Over on Patreon, we've created an alternative for people to support the YouTube channel, especially State of the Realm and Mondays with Mr. Happy, because of hashtag demonetized on YouTube, where videos are being demonetized en masse, and it is affecting the ad revenue that we earn from just simply producing content. I always like to be completely clear about this, that my YouTube channel has not been hit massively. I have found ways to create content in such a way that it is not a super hurtful thing. However, we've opened up this option, and people have been generally receptive to it, so that's why we've been doing it. I have the list of sponsors here. It's a new month, so if you notice your name's not on the list and it was on it last week, it may be because Patreon didn't charge you. If you had to end your support, I appreciate the support for the show, however long you may have supported it on Patreon initially. So, with that out of the way, we have our standard sponsors of Marshtechy, Sour Cream and Chives, Ellisan Le'ore, Velestra of Famfrit, Rynoet Chikara. I'm going to pull it up on the list right now so you guys can see the rest of them. Kiryoshi and the Reckless Tea Party, Free Company on Cactar. Ignis Fairgun from Diabolos, Goetia Valefar of Siren. We have Jean-Francois Themacholuis, Hersh, Fersh of Faerie, Phoenix Down Free Company on Goblin, Serren from Zodiark, and I think that is all the names. Yes, it is. So those are our standard sponsors, and then we can thank our elite sponsors. We have Krobos Moonscar, Naku Niyame, Johnua Odin of Tonberry, Aqua Sacrifice, Obaidil Shamsi, Spike, Rudy Rudiker, Nadian, Kuja Cross, that guy on the motorcycle apparently, Ahmed Kuranai Oni, Abdullah, Tin Colossus, Killer Hackman, Rawl Jr., Darklight 2013, Arthur Ramil Gaming Bishop, and Kiltastic Jones. So thank you again to Layla for coming on to the show. I'm doing this recording separately, so they're not here right now. And thank you to all of our sponsors and everyone who watches the show every week, whether it be on your iPod or on your Android device or on YouTube, wherever the platform may be. Thank you for supporting the stream every week like you do. But we will see you next week for whichever one of the two topics we mentioned in the show earlier. And I will see you guys then. Until then, take care.